All right, so part two. The colonists planned to win this Revolutionary War. Well, the colonists wanted to invade Quebec, which you saw that as a strategy during the French and Indian War as well. Protect Philadelphia. Philadelphia is kind of like Washington D.C. today. So Philadelphia is like their center of important information, their infrastructure of the nation at this point. They also wanted to get European allies. They knew that France and Spain would not want Britain to have so much control, and so they were going to reach out to the French and the Spanish for help to help these colonists gain independence and become their own independent nation. Also, they had to build a navy. The colonists did not have a navy. They didn't even have a navy fleet. So they didn't have any ships or anything to help protect them along the coast, the eastern coast. So you see that be a major priority for the colonists as well. And then they wanted to move the war south. You're going to see them want to move the war south. And when you think about the land north versus the land south, you can pretty much tell, well, they probably want to move the war south so they have all this open land to fight. And then that will make it easier for them to be able to win as well. They're not fighting in trees or anything, just open land to fight, get this over with, and go on and be the great nation that they are choosing to be. So the second battle took place in June of 1775 at Bunker and Breed's Hill, across the river from Boston. So how did the British actually win this particular battle? If you look at some of these drawings and illustrations, you'll pretty much see, and I'll let you take your own, look and make your own predictions. You pretty much can just tell and use deductive reasoning to figure out how the British won. But the biggest thing to understand is that the colonists ran out of ammo. Again, the British Army is superior. The colonists only have limited amounts of weapons and limited amount of ammo. And so even in the midst of them running out of gunpowder, you begin to see them pick up rocks and glass, anything they could find, and start throwing at these British regulars. And that just became their strategy during the early parts of the war. And remember, the colonists, they didn't even have any cannons at this point. So they were trying their best to hold their own. They felt like this was a moral battle, even though they didn't physically win this particular battle on the hills. But they felt like it was a moral battle because they held their own. And then you see William Prescott, who we heard from before as a committee of correspondence writer, kind of like Paul Revere. He was a colonial commander. And we hear him say, hey, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. He's basically saying, hey, don't start shooting at anybody on these hills until you can see the whites of their eyes. So as they're coming up the hill, make sure you're keeping an eye on them and you can see their eyes. Don't just start wasting, ammo. So he made that a big point because he knew that they were limited with their ammo. And that's William Prescott there. And again, we said that cannons are going to be a problem. So how are the colonists going to solve that problem? You're going to see Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen, then their little posse of guys called the Green Mountain Boys. They go to actually capture some cannons at Fort Ticonderoga. They also try to gain control of Canada and the Great Lakes, but they fail at that time because they don't have enough people. So they didn't wait the rest of the Continental Army to come. They were just trying to be like the heroes all of a sudden. But they were heroic because they captured cannons. They just didn't capture a large area. They captured items, the cannons. So that was going to be big, and it's going to be something you're going to see being very pivotal in this particular war, because we started off without cannons, and then you see them capture and take over 58 cannons. That's a lot of cannons. And so they get these cannons and they can use those throughout this war as long as they had cannonballs too, of course. During the snowy winter, the colonists used oxen to drag about 58 cannons from Fort Ticonderoga all the way to Boston. And you can look that up on a map later to actually see the distance there. But just imagine having to walk and drag and pull these cannons, and you're taking them, and they line them up surrounding Boston. So when the British woke up the next morning, they see they've captured these cannons. They have them surrounding Boston. And so what could the British do? They didn't have any other choice but to retreat, because they knew, hey, if these cannons are loaded and they're pointing down towards the city, we're just going to be, dead. We're just going to be, in pieces. So there's no reason to fight. So they evacuated Boston and sailed away to Canada. So that was a pretty good, pretty sweet victory for these colonists. But, King George is like, hey, I'm not giving up this easy. So when he gets wind of what's going on, he begins to send a vast number of naval fleet to the colonies. He's basically saying, hey, we're going to blockade these ports. We're going to block the East Coast. And so he ordered a blockade of all colonial ports. And he hired 9,000 Hessian mercenaries. Basically, the Hessians are going to be Germans that he pays. He's like, look, I don't want to risk my British soldiers being killed because these crazy people want to break away. I'll just pay somebody to go and give their life. And so that's what he did. So he hired 9,000 Hessian mercenaries to go and stop the rebellions in the colony, hoping that it will force these Americans to stop this war and to actually surrender to Great Britain and continue to be British colonies. So it's just common sense. Colonists learned that the British troops in Canada planned to attack. So they want to attack first. They capture Montreal, but not Quebec. So can you see them trying to go north into Canada to capture major cities in Canada? So they capture Montreal and not Quebec. Washington goes to Boston and finds the troops undisciplined and untrained. So basically they kind of been sitting low, waiting to hear what they're going to do next. The next mission, they're undisciplined, they're untrained, they're arguing. Then, people sitting around drinking and eating and not really keeping up their strength they need, not exercising. So at this point, Washington is he's upset. And then you see a lot of colonists who are on the fence. You have some that support the war, some that don't support the war. And this is where you see your loyalists and your patriots. Your loyalists are going to be loyal to King George and Britain. And your patriots are really going to fight for their patriotic cause to be independent. And these people really want to break away. So you start to see, a good even number at one point in the war. In January of 1776, a colonist named Thomas Paine, T-Pain? No, not the rapper, but T-Pain, Thomas Paine, is going to be a colonist who basically, he published a propaganda pamphlet called Common Sense. And basically he laid out the reason saying why it was common sense for these colonists to actually break away and become their own independent country. So it was very, very, very influential. And basically, he was saying a tiny island, the island of England or Britain, whichever one you call it, they shouldn't govern a huge continent. Why is Britain trying to govern North America? And they're so far away. So Thomas Paine was trying to make sense of this for everybody. He was saying that it's not sensible for people to have a king. And people should not just choose the best man for a job just because of who he is. Like, this person should have some type of attributes and qualities about himself in order to run a country, not just because somebody said, hey, you're king because your father was king or whatever, through whatever lineage in his family. So Thomas Paine was just trying to make sense of, why it was a good idea for these colonists to gain their independence and become Americans, to become their own independent country, independent of England. So again, should the colonists declare independence? Finally, in June 1776, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia proposed a resolution to the Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress. And Lee said that the colonies ought to be free and independent states, quote. So the colonists, the delegates, of the Continental Congress decided to actually write a formal document, formally declaring their independence from England. And this Declaration of Independence is more like a breakup letter, basically saying, hey, we should be this because of this. We're mad at you because of that. And so you see this be, just a way for them to express why they're mad, why they want to be independent, and what they're going to do in order to do that. The best writer of the group was Thomas Jefferson. So he wrote the rough draft, and then others began to edit that, Declaration of Independence. He used ideas from John Locke, and you've heard of that philosopher before. So he used ideas from John Locke about natural rights. People having, the life of the rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and property. He began to use all of those ideas in his declaration in order to show, hey, we should be able to have these rights and the government should protect these rights. And if we don't like our government as people, we can overthrow the government. So they use all of these ideas in the Declaration of Independence. And you will find those within our Constitution as well. So there are four major sections of the Declaration. First, one section explaining why they're breaking away. It's just like a girl and a boy breaking up, and the girl writing a love letter to say, hey, I'm breaking up with you because of this. And then discuss the rights they should have. And the girl says, hey, I should be able to do this. And even though I thought you loved me, we should have been doing this. And so basically, like I said, the Declaration of Independence was a breakup letter. And then the third major section basically detailed their complaints against Britain. And it showed that, hey, you did this and we're upset because we feel like you should have done that. And then 4 basically proclaimed the existence of a new nation. That was basically, like the girl saying, hey, I'm free and independent. You didn't put a ring on it. And so that's basically the Declaration of Independence, like a breakup letter. And the people or a person at the end saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm independent. I'm a single woman, that type of idea. Y'all know I'm animated. So, but anyway,